Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be looking at the character of Eric Birling from an Inspector Calls and how his character is integral to the themes and also key events throughout the play. Now, Eric is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Birling. He's the heir to the business and all of the respective wealth that surrounds that. He lives very much a life of luxury, but also one of excess. This is clear from what he's described at the table at the party at the beginning of the play as being squiffy. This shows that he is a drinker and also shows that perhaps he doesn't take his life and responsibilities too seriously. Although he works for his father in the factory, it's clear that this is not perhaps what he wants to do. As we know and find out, he spends a large amount of time in the Palace Bar, where, as we know, women of the town are known to frequent. He also is shown throughout the story to be someone who is not quite stable and quite unsure of themselves and the place that they take within society. So he never quite knows whether or not he is the equal or below or the superior to those around him. This can be seen at the dinner table when he makes barbed comments to his mother and father and Sheila. He lashes out at all three of them at one point or other throughout the play. He's also always described as being half assertive or half shy, showing that he's just not very secure and quite sensitive with how he perceives himself within the group. Now, the biggest key quote that we need to look at is this one where he says, "I was in the state when a chap easily turns nasty." This once again shows that Eric is a drinker and allows himself to be influenced heavily by his drink. This also leads further credence to the idea that actually when him and Eva or Daisy first slept together, that actually it wasn't entirely consensual. This quote shows that he perhaps forced himself upon her and that actually it wasn't a mutual thing. Now, this quote in itself shows J.B. Priestley's disdain for those of Eric's class, where they feel like they are able to have this power over women and also over people that they view as below them in the social scale. As Eric had picked up Daisy from the Palace Bar, he would have assumed that he could do with her whatever he wanted because of the fact that A, he was drunk, and B, he had all this power and all this money. Again, to further this, the next big quote that we need to look at is where he's talking about, "I didn't even remember," and that's the hellish thing, where he's talking about getting Eva pregnant. This shows as well that although he regrets what he had done by describing it as a hellish thing, it again sort of hints towards the fact that this was in fact a rape. Him saying, "I didn't even remember it," again shows that maybe he doesn't want to take responsibility for it at this point, or perhaps he'd swept it under the carpet and gone, "Well, I can't remember it, so it must not have happened, or it couldn't have happened." So obviously when he finds out, that changes. And when he goes on to say, "The fact remains I did what I did." Now, this is the first step in Eric's journey to taking responsibility for what he has done. Much like Sheila, he takes responsibility for it, and he says, and he holds his hands up and says, "We are all responsible for this. I've played my part and I regret it, and I wish I hadn't done it," in the same way that Sheila feels obviously very guilty for the part that she played in the role. Now, one of the other really important things that we need to make sure that we understand is that Eric has a very fraught relationship with his father. His father, Mr. Birling, obviously wants Eric to behave in a certain way befitting his station. However, Eric, you feel, is very insecure in his relationship with his father. He talks about how his father isn't a kind of man he could go to talk about such things. And Birling clearly thinks as well that he has spoilt his son with the quote, "Your trouble is you've been too spoilt." Again, hinting towards the fact that actually by giving Eric everything he wants, whether it be private education, this really wealthy background, it is almost again ruined the child. However, Birling is talking about this from a business point of view and not a humane point of view. So he is talking about the fact that he has been spoilt and how that is an issue when it comes to the running of his business. where Eric has obviously stolen some money to help pay for Eva's accommodation, and Birling is actually more concerned with how that's going to affect his business rather than how it's going to affect Eva and her life. And the last key quote is this one here, where Eric says to his father, "You don't understand anything you never did." Shows that perhaps Eric is again very insecure with his relationship with his father, and that Mr. Birling is not the kind of father that Eric can go to discuss these issues that he has with. Now, Eric links to the main themes in the following ways. So, social responsibility is the most obvious main theme that he links to, where when Eric rejoins us at the at the beginning of Act 3, after his mother has been telling everyone that it is the father's fault that Eva is in the position she is in, Eric immediately takes responsibility for this. However, he also implores everyone else to take responsibility for their actions as well, whether that be trying to get his mother to take some responsibility for the fact that she has helped bring the death of his grandson or granddaughter around, or whether it is when everyone is celebrating at the end, talking about how they've gotten away with it, he talks about how we're all nice people now. In addition, he links into class, as I've already mentioned, as the son of this wealthy businessman. He uses this power initially to take advantage of Eva. And although that is only initially, and it's quite obvious from there that he does care for her, the reason that they are in the situation they are in is obviously because of Eva's situation versus Eric's situation. And also Eric, perhaps more than any other character in this, shows the age divide, between the generational gap between their parents and himself, by not really wanting the same things as his father and being quite insecure, whereas Birling is very sure of himself and very sure of the direction he wants to take and is very career driven. Eric is very unsure of himself and very insecure, and wants to make his own way in the world but isn't really sure how to, and this generational gap is shown massively there. So that is it for Eric. Please do, as always, subscribe, please comment and leave any feedback you may have. Thank you very much for listening.